Cold. That was the first thing Ethan Frost felt as his eyes slowly opened. His lungs burned as they filled with air for the first time in what should have been 5 years. The lights in his cryopod flickered weakly. A thin layer of frost covered the inside of the clear panel above his face. Something was wrong. The awakening sequence should have been smooth, warm. This was rough, like being yanked from a deep sleep by a bucket of ice water. Ethan pushed against the pod's cover. It resisted, then released with a hiss. Stale air rushed in, carrying the scent of dust and disuse. He pulled himself up, his muscles weak from disuse. "Computer, status report," he said, his voice cracking. No response. "Computer." A weak blue light blinked on at a nearby console. The computer's voice came through, distorted and slow. "Welcome back, Commander Frost. Current date is March 17, 2157. Ethan froze. Repeat date. March 17, 2157. He gripped the edge of the pod. That couldn't be right. He had entered cryosleep in 2088. That would make it almost 70 years, not 5. "Computer, what happened to the crew of Vigilant Dawn Station?" Information incomplete. Last logged personnel departure was on August 3, 2092. Station has been on automated maintenance protocol since that time. Ethan looked around the dim chamber. 5 other cryopods lined the wall. All were empty, their panels dark. He had been left behind, forgotten for decades. His legs shook as he stood. The station felt dead around him. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the dusty floor. He made his way to his locker and found his uniform. It felt strange against his skin, like it belonged to someone else. The main bridge was worse. Dust covered every surface. Screens were dark except for one that displayed minimal life support information. The observation window revealed Earth below, but it looked different. More lights covered its surface. New structures extended from the planet into low orbit. "Computer, access news feeds and historical records from the last 70 years. The main screen flickered to life. Information began to scroll past, faster than he could read. Humanity had changed. They had colonized Mars, then the moons of Jupiter, built ships that could reach nearby stars, made contact with alien species, formed alliances. Ethan sank into the captain's chair as the history lesson continued. Wars had been fought and won. New technologies discovered. And through it all, the old orbital stations like Vigilant Dawn had been forgotten, left to circle Earth like ancient relics. Then he noticed something strange in his personnel file. The words "Dormanti Centennial Protocol" flashed in red. Below it, "Activate only in HFY Cheyenne, Levield CYSS. Computer, explain dormant Sentinel Protocol." "That information is classified, Commander Frost." "Override. Authorization Frost, Alpha 79. The computer paused. Authorization accepted. Dormant Sentinel Protocol. Top secret military program established in 2087. Selected soldiers underwent genetic enhancement procedures designed to activate under specific stress conditions. Full effects unknown. Project discontinued in 2088 due to ethical concerns. All subjects placed in cryosleep for observation. Ethan looked down at his hands. They looked normal. He felt normal. Mostly. "Computer, why was I left here while the others were removed?" "Your cryopod showed anomalous readings. Medical team deemed transfer unsafe. Final note indicates your pod was to be monitored remotely until further notice." A chill ran through him that had nothing to do with the cryosleep. He had been left here because something was happening to him. Something they couldn't understand. "Computer, can we contact Earth Command?" Affirmative. Old communication channel still operational. Ethan took a deep breath. Open a channel. As the system hummed to life, he stared at his reflection in a darkened screen. For just a moment, he thought he saw something move beneath his skin, something that didn't belong there. The communication array powered up, sending his signal down to Earth. After 70 years of silence, the lost guardian was about to make contact. The communication screen buzzed with static for several minutes. Ethan waited, his heart beating faster than normal. Finally, the static cleared, revealing the face of a young woman in a crisp blue uniform. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "This is Lieutenant Zoe Blackwell, Luna Command. Identify yourself and your station." Her voice was firm but couldn't hide her surprise. "Commander Ethan Frost, Orbital Station Vigilant Dawn. I've just awakened from cryosleep." The woman's mouth fell open. "That's impossible. Vigilant Dawn was scheduled for orbital decay. It should be empty." "Well, I'm very much here, Lieutenant, and I need to speak with whoever's in charge now." Zoe looked off-screen, speaking quickly to someone Ethan couldn't see. Alarms began to sound on her end. She turned back to him, her face pale. "Stay on this channel, Commander. Do not disconnect." The screen changed, and for 10 long minutes, Ethan watched a series of people rush in and out of view, pointing at him and arguing. Finally, an older man with gray hair and a heavily decorated uniform sat down. "Commander Frost, I'm Admiral Lewis Carter." The man studied Ethan's face carefully. "Your awakening was not planned. Something must have triggered the emergency protocols." "What emergency? What's happening?" The Admiral sighed. "We're at war, Commander. A war we're losing." Images flashed across the screen. Planets with huge black ships hovering above them. Cities in ruins. Strange shadow-like figures moving through the wreckage. 3 months ago, vessels unlike anything we've seen before appeared at our furthest colony. They destroyed everything without warning or communication. We call them the Void Heralds. Our weapons barely affect them. Admiral Carter's voice hardened. 2 more colonies have fallen since then. They'll reach Earth in less than 2 weeks. Ethan felt cold again. What does this have to do with me? A woman in a white lab coat stepped into view. "I'm Dr. Alice Kelly. I've studied the Sentinel Protocol for 20 years. You were part of a military experiment, Commander. Your DNA was altered." "Altered how?" "We don't know exactly. The scientists who created the program left incomplete records. They were trying to create soldiers who could adapt to any threat, whose bodies could evolve new defenses when needed. But something went wrong. The changes were too unpredictable, too powerful." Ethan remembered the strange movement he thought he'd seen beneath his skin. "So I'm some kind of weapon." Admiral Carter nodded. "The last resort kind. There were 12 of you originally. The others either died in stasis or changed too much to remain human. You're the only one left." "We need you, Commander," Dr. Kelly said. "Our scientists believe the Void Heralds exist partly in another dimension. That's why our weapons can't hurt them properly, but your altered body might be able to interact with them." Ethan stood up, anger rising in him. "You kept me frozen for 70 years as a backup plan. We're sending a ship to bring you in," Admiral Carter said, ignoring his question. "The swift retribution will reach you in 6 hours. Its captain, Samantha Wells, has been briefed on your situation." Ethan wanted to argue, to demand more answers, but a sharp pain shot through his head. Images flashed in his mind. Crystal structures, mathematical equations, beams of shadow and light locked in ancient battle. "Commander, are you all right?" Dr. Kelly leaned toward the screen, watching him with professional interest. "Fine," Ethan lied. "Just adjusting." "There's something else you should know," Admiral Carter said quietly. "The Void Heralds, they're searching for something. When they attacked the colonies, they ignored most of our technology. Instead, they broke into our genetic research facilities. We think they're looking for people like you." The pain in Ethan's head grew stronger. In the reflection of the screen, he saw his eyes flash with a blue light that wasn't human. 6 hours, he said. "I'll be ready." As the communication ended, Ethan felt something stirring inside him. Something old and powerful and very, very angry. Ethan spent the next 6 hours searching through the station's limited records about the Sentinel Protocol. Most files were corrupted or heavily redacted. What little he found disturbed him. The scientists had used alien genetic material, discovered in an ancient meteorite. They believed it contained adaptive properties that could revolutionize human warfare. He was examining his arm, looking for any visible changes when the ship arrived. The swift Retribution was sleek and dangerous-looking, unlike the bulky vessels of his time. It docked with a gentle thud. The airlock opened to reveal a tall woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes. Her uniform bore the insignia of a captain. Commander Frost. Captain Samantha Wells. She offered her hand. When he shook it, her eyebrows rose slightly. "Your grip is strong." Ethan hadn't noticed. "Sorry. Don't be. We need all the strength we can get." She gestured to the 2 soldiers behind her. "This is my security team, Lieutenants Greg Mason and Olivia Wright." Neither offered to shake his hand. They watched him like he might explode. "Welcome aboard the Swift Retribution, Commander," Captain Wells said as they walked through the airlock. "We've set up quarters for you, and the medical team is eager to examine you." The ship was a marvel of technology. Holographic displays, gravity control, materials Ethan couldn't identify. The crew stopped to stare as he passed. Some looked hopeful, others fearful. The medical bay was large and filled with equipment. Dr. Grace Martinez, a small woman with kind eyes, but a no-nonsense manner, ran scan after scan. Her expression grew more concerned with each result. "Your muscle density has increased 200% since your last physical in 2088, she said. "Your bones are reinforced with an unknown crystalline structure, and your neural activity." She shook her head. "I've never seen anything like it." "What does it mean?" Ethan asked. "It means you're changing. Rapidly." Dr. Martinez showed him a brain scan. Parts of his brain glowed bright blue. "These areas shouldn't be active. They're processing information in ways the human brain simply can't." A sudden pain shot through Ethan's head. He gasped and grabbed the examination table. The metal bent under his fingers. "Commander." Dr. Martinez reached for him. Ethan saw things that weren't there. A vast city made of crystal, beams of pure light moving through it. Then darkness falling, shadows consuming everything. He heard voices speaking in a language he didn't know, yet somehow understood. Asterisk, they come again. The cycle continues. Find the others asterisk. "I need to get to Earth," he said, his voice strange even to his own ears. "There are others like me." Captain Wells, who had been watching from the doorway, stepped forward. "What others?" "The Admiral said you were the last." "No, there are more. 3 more. I can feel them." Ethan didn't understand how he knew this, but the certainty was overwhelming. "That's impossible," Dr. Martinez said. "All records indicate." "The records are wrong. The other test subjects didn't die or change too much." Ethan stood up, steadier now. "They were hidden, scattered. A precaution in case one couldn't be activated or was destroyed." Captain Wells studied him. "How do you know this?" Ethan's eyes met hers. "I don't know. I just know." An alarm blared throughout the ship. Lieutenant Mason rushed in. "Captain, we've detected a Void Herald scout ship near Jupiter. It's changing course to intercept us." Captain Wells turned to Ethan. "Looks like we're about to see what you can do, Commander." As they rushed to the bridge, Ethan felt the changes accelerating. His vision sharpened. His hearing picked up conversations through walls. His mind processed information at impossible speeds. But most disturbing was the presence growing inside him. Ancient, powerful, and definitely not human. Whatever the scientists had put inside him was waking up, and it was angry. The bridge of the Swift Retribution buzzed with tense activity. On the main screen, the Void Herald scout ship appeared as a dark blot against the backdrop of Jupiter. It was unlike any vessel Ethan had seen. Not quite solid, its edges seeming to fade in and out of existence. "All weapons ready, Captain," Lieutenant Wright reported. "But based on previous encounters, our standard weapons will have limited effect." Captain Wells nodded grimly. "Keep your distance. We're here to observe and report back to Earth Command." Ethan stepped closer to the view screen, drawn to the strange ship. "We need to board it." The bridge fell silent. Captain Wells stared at him. "That's suicide, Commander." "No, it's necessary." Ethan couldn't explain the certainty he felt. "We need to understand what we're fighting. And I need to test something." "Test what?" Captain Wells asked. Before Ethan could answer, the Void Herald ship accelerated toward them. Its movement was jerky, unnatural, like it was skipping through space rather than moving through it. "Evasive maneuvers," Captain Wells ordered. The swift retribution banked hard, but the alien vessel matched their movement with impossible precision. A beam of dark energy shot out, striking their shields. "Shields at 60% from a single hit," Lieutenant Mason reported, his voice tight. "Return fire," ordered Captain Wells. The ship's weapons launched. Lasers, plasma torpedoes, kinetic projectiles. They passed through the Void Herald vessel with minimal effect, as if hitting smoke. Another dark energy beam struck them. "Shields at 30%. Ethan felt something surge within him. His hands began to tingle, then burn. Looking down, he saw his skin rippling, changing. Beneath it, something crystalline glinted. "Captain," he said, his voice oddly calm, "we need to let them board us." "Have you lost your mind?" Captain Wells snapped. "Trust me." Ethan met her eyes. "This is why I'm here." After a long moment, Captain Wells nodded. "All hands, prepare for potential boarding. Security teams to all decks." The Void Herald ship moved alongside them. The sensors showed a strange energy buildup. "They're creating some kind of dimensional rift," Dr. Martinez said, scanning the readings. "It's a boarding technique they've used before." Ethan felt drawn to the cargo bay. "They'll come through there. I need to be there." Captain Wells hesitated, then nodded to Lieutenant Mason. "Go with him. Full security team." The cargo bay was large and empty. Ethan stood in the center with 6 armed security officers around him. Lieutenant Mason kept glancing at him nervously. "What's happening to your hands?" he asked. Ethan looked down. His fingers were elongating, the skin hardening and becoming translucent. "I don't know." The air in the cargo bay began to ripple. A dark tear formed in the center of the room, widening until it was the size of a doorway. Cold air rushed out, carrying a smell like burnt metal. "Hold your positions," Lieutenant Mason ordered, raising his weapon. 3 figures emerged from the tear. They were vaguely humanoid, but seemed to be made of living shadow. Their edges blurred and shifted constantly. Where faces should be, they had only swirling darkness with points of deep purple light like eyes. The security team opened fire. The energy bolts passed through the shadow beings with no effect. One officer was struck by a tendril of darkness and fell to the ground, his body instantly cold and still. Ethan stepped forward. The pain in his hands reached a crescendo. With a sound like cracking ice, his arms transformed. From his elbows to his fingertips, they became crystalline structures, sharp, radiant, and humming with energy. The shadow beings paused, their purple eyes fixed on Ethan. A sound like distant thunder rolled through the cargo bay. They were communicating. "Precursor weapon," the sound seemed to say. "Guardian." Ethan didn't understand how he could comprehend them, but he did. And more than that, he knew exactly what to do. He lunged forward, his crystalline arms slicing through the air. Unlike the weapons of the security team, when Ethan struck the first shadow being, it screamed. The shadow being's scream was like broken glass in everyone's minds. It recoiled from Ethan, dark mist pouring from where his crystalline arm had cut it. The other 2 Void Heralds moved with sudden urgency, their forms rippling as they circled Ethan. Lieutenant Mason and his team backed away, weapons still raised but useless. "Commander." His voice shook slightly. Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. The transformation was spreading up his arms to his shoulders. Knowledge filled his mind. Combat moves he had never learned, understanding of dimensional physics beyond human science. He moved with impossible speed, slashing at the second herald. The beam dodged, its body stretching and twisting in ways that defied normal space. A tendril of darkness shot from it, wrapping around Ethan's leg. Cold pain spread where it touched him. Ethan roared, a sound that wasn't human. His eyes glowed bright blue. He grabbed the tendril with his crystalline hand, and it shattered like frozen smoke. The herald shrieked again. The third being moved toward the security team. Lieutenant Mason fired desperately as it approached. "Get back," Ethan shouted. He leaped across the cargo bay, covering an impossible distance. His crystalline arm plunged deep into the third herald. For a moment, they were frozen together. Images flooded Ethan's mind. A vast fleet of herald ships, countless worlds consumed by darkness, and behind it all, something ancient and hungry, pushing the heralds forward like a farmer driving cattle. The beam collapsed into a pool of shadow, then evaporated. The second herald was already retreating toward the dimensional tear. The first, wounded but still moving, followed quickly. The tear sealed behind them with a sound like air rushing into a vacuum. Ethan stood alone in the center of the cargo bay, his transformed arms glowing softly. Slowly, painfully, the crystalline structures receded, leaving normal human arms behind. He fell to his knees, exhausted. Captain Wells rushed in with Dr. Martinez. "What happened?" The sensors went crazy. Lieutenant Mason pointed at Ethan. He killed them. Actually killed them. Nothing we have can do that." Dr. Martinez knelt beside Ethan, scanning him with a handheld device. "Your body temperature is 104 degrees. Heart rate 3 times normal. And there's something in your bloodstream that wasn't there before." Ethan looked up at Captain Wells. "They're scared of me, of what I am." His voice sounded distant to his own ears. "And they're right to be afraid." Back in the medical bay, Dr. Martinez drew blood samples from Ethan. The liquid glowed faintly blue in the vials. "Your DNA is rewriting itself," she said, staring at a screen showing his genetic code. "There are sections that don't match any known human pattern." Captain Wells stood nearby, arms crossed. "What does that mean for him?" "I don't know." Dr. Martinez shook her head. "But whatever killed that herald came from these changes." Ethan closed his eyes. The presence in his mind was stronger now. Images kept flashing. Star maps, ancient battles, faces of beings made of crystal and light. "We need to get to Earth," he said. "And then to Proxima Centauri." Captain Wells frowned. "Proxima Centauri. Why?" "The Galactic Concordat is gathering there. Representatives from all allied species." Ethan opened his eyes. "They need to know what's happening to me. And I need to find the others." "How do you know about the Concordat meeting?" "That's classified information." Captain Wells studied him closely. "I just know." Ethan touched his temple. "There's something in here. Memories that aren't mine. Knowledge I shouldn't have." Dr. Martinez looked worried. "Your brain activity is off the charts. These patterns here suggest you're accessing information stored somewhere in your altered DNA." "Not DNA," Ethan said. "Something older. The scientists who made the Sentinel Protocol didn't create anything new. They woke up something that was already there. Something that was hidden in human DNA for millions of years." Captain Wells' communicator beeped. "The Void Herald ship is transmitting a signal. Long range, powerful." "They're calling for help," Ethan said, certainty in his voice. "We hurt them. Now they'll bring everything they have." He stood up, steadier now. "We need to go. Now, before it's too late." The swift Retribution pushed its engines to the limit, racing back to Earth. Admiral Carter was waiting for them at Luna Command. his face grim as Ethan explained what had happened with the Void Heralds. "You're saying you can actually hurt them?" the Admiral asked. Ethan nodded. "And I know where to find the other three like me." A holographic map of the solar system appeared on the table between them. Ethan pointed to 3 locations: Ganymede, Mars Research Station, and Earth's Pacific Defense Platform. Lisa Harmon. She's a mining engineer on Ganymede who's been finding unusual crystal formations. Derek Foster is an astrophysicist on Mars whose equations predicted the Herald arrival, though nobody believed him. And Olivia Reeves, a Special Forces commander on the defense platform who survived 3 impossible missions against the Heralds. Admiral Carter stared at him. "How could you possibly know these people?" "The same way I know the Heralds are coming with everything they have. The same way I know they're running from something even worse." Ethan's eyes flashed blue. "The Guardian inside me is fully awake now." Captain Wells, who had stayed quiet until now, stepped forward. "Sir, I saw what Commander Frost did to those Heralds. If there are 3 more people who can do the same, we need them." The Admiral was silent for a long moment. "Very well. I'll dispatch ships to bring in these 3 people." He turned to Ethan. "In the meantime, you're going to meet our allies." The Proxima Centauri system was filled with ships from a dozen different species. The Swift Retribution docked with a massive station that served as the meeting place for the Galactic Concordat. Ethan, Captain Wells, and Admiral Carter walked through corridors filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some looked almost human. Others were completely foreign. Beings of light, crystalline structures, even sentient gases contained in special suits. In a large circular chamber, representatives from every allied species waited. Their reactions to Ethan were immediate and dramatic. Several stepped back in fear. Others moved closer, eyes or sensing organs fixed on him with intense interest. One being, an insect-like creature with multiple eyes and a shimmering exoskeleton, approached Ethan slowly. "I am Ambassador Crix of the Cavaxi," it said, its voice translated by a small device. You are Penumbra Devourer. The old texts speak of you." "What texts?" Ethan asked. "The warning archives. Records left by the precursors before they vanished." The ambassador's many eyes blinked in sequence. They spoke of weapons hidden in compatible species across the galaxy. Weapons that would awaken when the void returned. A wave of whispers passed through the chamber. Admiral Carter looked confused. "You're saying Ethan is some kind of alien weapon?" "Not alien," said another representative, a tall being with pale skin and 4 arms. "The precursors seeded countless worlds with their genetic material. Your species, humans, carries a particularly strong strain. When your scientists activated the dormant genes, they awakened what we call a guardian." Captain Wells looked at Ethan with new understanding. "That's why the Heralds are attacking human worlds first. They're looking for the guardians before they fully awaken." "Not just humans," Ambassador Crix said. "We have reports of transformations beginning among the Luridians and the Sola Collective as well. But humans seem to be the most compatible hosts." A commotion at the chamber entrance drew everyone's attention. Security Chief Ryan Kendrick, a stern man who had made no secret of his distrust for Ethan, rushed in. "We have an emergency transmission from Earth," he announced. "The other 3 subjects have been located, but Void Herald forces are converging on all 3 positions simultaneously. They know exactly where to look." Ethan felt the Guardian presence surge within him. "We need to split up. Gather the others before the Heralds can kill them." Ambassador Crix stepped forward. "The Concordat will provide ships, fast ones." "But will they be fast enough?" Captain Wells asked. Ethan looked at his hands, remembering how they had transformed. "They have to be. If the Heralds get to the others first, Earth is just the beginning of what we'll lose." The next 3 days passed in a blur of desperate action. The Concordat provided their fastest ships. Captain Wells took command of the mission to Ganymede to find Lisa Harmon. Ambassador Crix volunteered his own vessel to retrieve Derek Foster from Mars. Ethan, with Security Chief Kendrick reluctantly at his side, headed for Earth's Pacific Defense Platform to find Olivia Reeves. Ethan's ship reached the platform first. It was a massive structure floating in the Pacific Ocean, bristling with weapons and surrounded by smaller defense vessels. As they approached, alarms blared. "Void Herald ships detected," the pilot announced. 3 of them, approaching from the north. Security Chief Kendrick scowled. "We're too late." "No," Ethan said. "We still have time." He could feel Olivia's presence somehow, a distant echo of the same power inside him. They landed on the platform amidst chaos. Personnel ran in all directions, preparing for battle. Ethan followed his instincts, moving quickly through the corridors with Kendrick struggling to keep up. They found Olivia Reeves in the command center. She was tall and focused, barking orders to her team. When she saw Ethan, she froze. Something passed between them, recognition on a level deeper than sight. "You're like me," she said simply. "Yes, and we need to leave now. The heralds are coming for you specifically." Olivia looked at her hands. "I've been having dreams, and sometimes, in battle, I can do things that shouldn't be possible." A massive explosion rocked the platform. The heralds had arrived. "We don't have time for explanations," Ethan said. "Trust me." To Kendrick's surprise, Olivia nodded. "Let's go." They were halfway to the landing pad when shadow figures poured through the walls. Dozens of Void Heralds, more than Ethan had seen before. He felt the transformation begin immediately, crystals spreading up his arms. Beside him, Olivia gasped as her hands began to change too, becoming like liquid metal that formed into long, sharp blades. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. "The Guardian is awakening," Ethan said. "Don't fight it." Together, they cut through the heralds, their transformed bodies inflicting real damage on the shadow beings. Kendrick fired his weapon uselessly, but managed to protect their flank as they pushed forward. They reached the ship just as communications came in from Captain Wells. "We have Lisa Harmon. Her entire mining facility was under attack, but we got her out. She's changing. Her body is becoming something like living crystal." Ambassador Crix's message followed. "Derek Foster is secure. The heralds nearly captured him, but his mind is extraordinary. He created equations that temporarily disrupted their dimensional shifting. His brain is transforming, growing new structures." As they escaped the platform, Ethan saw more herald ships appearing. Dozens, then hundreds. The main invasion had begun. All ships returned to Earth Command immediately. Admiral Carter ordered over the communication system. "The heralds have launched their full attack." Earth's defenses engaged the herald fleet, but for every shadow ship they managed to damage, 10 more appeared. Regular weapons still had minimal effect. Only specialized energy weapons based on Ethan's crystalline structure showed any promise, but there weren't enough of them. When all 4 ships carrying the Guardians arrived at Earth Command, Ethan felt a strange pull toward the others. Lisa Harmon was partially crystalline now, her body glittering in the light. Derek Foster's eyes glowed with complex equations that hovered in the air around him. Olivia Reeves had regained her human appearance, but moved with impossible grace and speed. "I know what we need to do," Derek said as they gathered. "The equations are clear. The heralds exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. That's their strength, but also their weakness. We need to create a dimensional seal," Lisa continued, somehow understanding. "Like the precursors did millions of years ago. But it requires all 4 of us," Olivia added. "And one will have to remain at the event horizon to keep it stable." They all looked at Ethan. As the first to fully awaken, the choice seemed clear. He thought of Samantha Wells, wishing they'd had more time. "I'll do it," he said. "But first, we need to get close to their command ship." Above them, darkness spread across Earth's sky as thousands of herald ships moved into position. The final battle had begun. 3 years passed since the day Earth's sky had turned black with herald ships. 3 years since the 4 Guardians had risen to meet them. 3 years since Ethan Frost had vanished into the dimensional rift, taking the entire Herald fleet with him. Samantha Wells, now Admiral Wells, stood on the bridge of the Stellar Hope, Earth's newest flagship. The ship hovered at the edge of what scientists called the Frost Boundary, the place where normal space met the dimensional tear that Ethan had stabilized with his sacrifice. "Status report," she said quietly. "All readings normal." "Admiral," Lieutenant Mason replied. He had survived the war and chosen to serve under her. The boundary remained stable. Lisa Harmon entered the bridge. Her body was still partially crystalline, glittering under the lights. After the war, she had chosen to embrace her guardian nature rather than fight it. "The sensors are picking up something unusual," she said. "Quantum fluctuations at coordinates 227 by 84. Samantha moved to the main view screen. She had changed in these 3 years, harder, more focused, but also more connected to something greater than herself. Sometimes in her dreams, she saw equations and crystal cities. Sometimes she heard Ethan's voice. In those final moments, as the other 3 Guardians had opened the dimensional rift and Ethan prepared to enter it to keep it stable, he had touched her face with his transformed hand. Something had passed between them. Memories, emotions, and something else. A small piece of the Guardian consciousness. "Focus all sensors on those coordinates," she ordered. The screen zoomed in on empty space. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then a small point of light appeared, growing larger. "Energy readings off the scale," Mason reported, voice tense. "It's similar to the pattern when the rift first opened." Samantha leaned forward. "Is something coming through?" Derek Foster rushed onto the bridge. His mind had continued to evolve, allowing him to perceive mathematical patterns in reality itself. "It's him," he said with absolute certainty. He found a way back. The light expanded, forming a small tear in space. Through it stepped a figure that was both familiar and strange. Ethan Frost, but transformed. His body shifted between human form and crystalline structure, never fully settling on either. His eyes held stars. "Life support to the observation deck," Samantha ordered. "Now." Minutes later, she stood facing him across the transparent barrier of the observation deck's airlock. For a moment, neither spoke. "Samantha," he finally said, his voice carrying echoes of distant places. "Ethan," she replied, "you're alive." In a manner of speaking. He smiled, and for a moment looked entirely human again. "I've been elsewhere, learning, growing." The heralds, contained, returned to their proper dimension. He placed a hand against the barrier. "But that's not why I came back." Behind him, more figures began to materialize, beams of pure light with vaguely humanoid shades. Samantha gasped. "The precursors," she whispered, somehow knowing. Ethan nodded. "They weren't gone, just waiting. My sacrifice woke them from their own long slumber." "Why are they here?" "To teach, to guide." Ethan's eyes met hers. "The cycle of extinction has been broken, Samantha. For the first time in millions of years, the heralds have been stopped before they could complete their harvest. The precursors believe this means the younger races, humans, Kavaxi, all of us, are ready for what comes next." "What does come next?" she asked. The barrier between them began to dissolve. Ethan stepped through, becoming fully human as he approached her. He took her hands in his. "You already know," he said gently. "The dreams, the equations, the piece of me I left with you." Samantha nodded. Since that day, she had carried something of the guardian within her, a seed of what Ethan had become. "There are more out there," Ethan said. "Other guardians awakening on 1,000 worlds. The precursors want to help guide them, guide us, so we don't repeat their mistakes." He looked back at the light beings waiting patiently behind him, then again at Samantha. "Will you help me?" She squeezed his hands. In her mind, she could see the future unfolding, not just for Earth, but for all life across the stars. A new beginning. "Yes," she said simply. Beyond the ship, the stars seemed to shine brighter than before.